I won't lie, I was a bit concerned with new Pokemon Snap before its release. I was pretty hyped for it and sure that it was going to be at least some amount of fun, but replaying the original wasn't exactly as fun as I thought it was going to be. It was just super short and there just was not much to it. Combine that with the fact that I've not genuinely enjoyed a Pokemon game since Black and White, which is what, 2011? I really thought the new Pokemon Snap was going to be just okay. But my god, this game is actually much better than the original, and it's a pretty good game in its own right. This game takes place in the Lental region. Professor Meyer is trying to conduct research on Pokemon, and he thinks that taking pictures of them will really accelerate his research. There's a bit more structure to the story in this game than the original, and some cutscenes even pop up every now and then, which is pretty nice. The story is simple, but that's not really the focus of a game like this, but at least I'm pretty happy that it's still, here. Because in the original Pokemon Snap, it's basically just like Professor Oak wants you to take pictures of Pokemon just because. Here, the professor wants you to take pictures of Pokemon because they're trying to find more about Illumina Pokemon. Get this! New Pokemon Snap is the player taking pictures of Pokemon. It retains the original's gameplay of being a rail shooter. There are several things in the player's arsenal to enhance these photos that they can take. In addition to that, every Pokemon has 4 poses, which is graded on a 4-star system. More interesting poses are typically the 4-star ratings, and some of them can be pretty difficult to figure out. Just for example, Ferd's 4-star pose involves it interacting with a bomb of snow on the ice stage at night. That one took me longer than I care to admit. The first thing in the player's arsenal is the Fluff Fruit. These lightweight fruits can be used to lure Pokemon. The Pokemon can also end up eating the Fluff Fruit, which can lead to some 2- or 3-star poses. I personally kind of find it funny that in the first game, they were just apples. So you kind of had Todd just, in his little 1-0, just throwing apples at Pokemon's heads, and now this game's like, no, they're Fluff Fruit, they're light, you're not hurting the Pokemon. Just something that kind of tickled me a little bit. Another thing that the player has is the replacement for the Pokeflute called the Melody Box. This will make some music and some Pokemon will dance, some will wake up from sleeping, and some will just not care. These two objects were more or less in the original Pokemon Snap on the Nintendo 64. There are no Pester Balls, unfortunately, but there is a new type of item at the player's disposal. This new item is called the Illumina Orb. These can be thrown at Pokemon, and depending on the type of Pokemon, they may do something fascinating. There are also these Crystal Bloom flowers, and when an Illumina Orb is thrown at one, the flower will start to glow very bright. Doing this may trigger a new Pokemon to appear, or make surrounding Pokemon do something special. There's also, of course, the Dash engine, but like in the original Pokemon Snap, this damn thing takes way too long to unlock. There are the typical stages, like in the original Pokemon Snap, where there are about 10 to 20 different types scattered throughout the run. And there are also the new Illumina stages. These stages will feature one big bad Pokemon, with some other regular Pokemon in there. For the first one, it's good old Meganium here, and certain tasks need to be done to get pictures of him. One of the later ones is Wishy-Washy, and the player has to throw Illumina orbs at the smaller ones, and then they transform into the school. It's really cool. These are a nice way to give new Pokemon Snap a boss, I guess? I personally prefer the regular stages, but I really like what Namco Bandai did here. They also did a good job of picking Pokemon that don't get much of a spotlight already. Like chasing Steelix throughout the cave was cool. Chasing after Volcanora in the volcano was also pretty sweet. Speaking of stages, there are a decent variety on display here. I don't know if I have a favorite yet, but I really like the Elsewhere Forest. It gets split up into other portions and the player gets teleported to different spots throughout it. Depending on how the player interacts with the Pokemon in it, the 4 different seasons can be unlocked. It might be the most unique stage in the game. I also like the Volcano one in the original game, but here, it's straight badass. So many cool Pokemon like Charizard, Tyrantrum, Flareon, Aerodactyl, Typhlosion are found here, and I'm all game for it. The ice stages are really neat too, as I love how the snow looks in this game. The theme of the Mighty Anna chasing the Furret throughout the stage at nighttime is neat as well. Then there is the underwater stage as well. There are a couple of blunders though. Like the sweltering sand stages are just kind of meh. They're kind of big and empty and they're not my favorites. I'm a pretty big fan of the roster in this game. Expecting all 800 and whatever Pokemon, no, that wasn't gonna happen. That is just simply dumb. Instead, 214 are represented, and I think they did a good job of having Generation 1 through 3 favorites, while having plenty of newer Pokemon. I'm surprised to see my older favorites such as Starmie, Mew, Typhlosion, Crobat make an appearance in Pokemon Snap. I think that the big bad Illumina Pokemon choices were also pretty great, as they are unpopular and underappreciated Pokemon. Like I said, the first one's Meganium, a basically forgotten Gen 2 starter. At about 37 hours in, I found the last Pokemon I needed. However, I have to say, it turned into a Google Fest at the end there though, as some things in this game they aren't really that clear. It almost feels like my concerns of the original were heard by Namco Bandai and they set out to fix them. The first one of my concerns was the game's length. I took my sweet ass time in the original Pokemon Snap and it only took me an hour and a half to get to the credits and only about another hour and a half to beat all the challenge scores. So in about 3 hours, I would 100% of the original, and it's not like I was busting my ass to get it done. I saw the credits roll in new Pokemon Snap at about 8 or 9 hours in. However, I'm not even close to done. I am a try-hard completionist nerd, and this game is perfect for you poor suckers that are like me. Every Pokemon has 4 poses which are rated on a 4-star system. These stars can be filled in with either bronze, silver, gold, or diamond stars. Getting a diamond star requires a photo score of at least 4,000. It is super addicting trying to get a diamond star rating for each Pokemon and each pose. It's really neat to replay a stage to see how a Pokemon is in a new pose. Let me tell you, some of these 4-star ratings though, they're really hard to get, especially get a good, nice, clear photo of. Since there are 214 Pokemon with 4 poses each, that means that as a minimum of 856 pictures of Pokemon will need to be taken. If one wants to get all diamond ratings, they can expect to be grinding for a long time. Another thing that I criticized about the original Pokemon Snap was how the stages themselves don't really change. With only 7 stages in the original, this means that there just wasn't that much material to work with, despite the main gameplay being fun and the idea just being straight up brilliant. Now stages can be upgraded 1, 2, or 3 times for a total of 2, 3, or 4 stages. It's cool to play the Volcano stage, trying to perfect your pictures, then reach level 3 and see Charizard in there. It makes the stages feel oddly super different even though the player is going through the same paths. Or actually, speaking of paths, there are now diverging paths, which goes a really long way in keeping this game fresh. Between diverging paths and the levels upgrading to have new Pokemon inhabit them, it really makes these stages much more enjoyable and, in my opinion, replayable. The original Pokemon Snap didn't really have diverging paths. They had different endings, sure, like throwing the ball, or, well, yeah, the Pester Ball at, what's-his-face, Electrode, but this wouldn't change what Pokemon appear, it just changed the ending. However, there are actually a couple of things I prefer in the original. I'd argue that the biggest one is the lack of evolution. Evolving Magikarp into Gyarados was just so goddamn cool back in the day. Turning those weird-faced Bulbasaurs into Dittos was really neat too. Unfortunately, those moments don't really happen here. The player can still interact with Pokemon by throwing the Fluff Fruit and the Illumina Orbs at them, but it's just not the same. I also kind of miss the puzzles in the original Pokemon Snap, like throwing the Pester Ball at Porygon, exploding the Electrode, or hitting Mankey off the mountain. The alternate paths in this game, for the most part, are just like, hey, put up a skin, and then you scan for it. Although some of them, like the Reef one, is actually pretty cool to unlock. Lastly, the original soundtrack is just so good. It slaps so hard that my skin turns red. However, new Pokemon Snap really digs into this relaxing and soft feel music, which I kinda get, it is a relaxing game, but I just don't prefer it. The odd music when Professor Oak checked your photos in the original just made it more epic. Speaking of rating photos, I'll go over that real quick, as it's been slightly altered from the original. First is pose, and the Pokemon's doing something unique. It can be up to, I think, 1,500? Up next is size, which can be 2,000, which is the highest value. So that's like the most important one. Make sure the Pokemon's big. Then there's direction. Basically, if the Pokemon is facing the camera, it is worth more. Up next is the placement, and this refers to how well the Pokemon is centered. These two can go up to 1,000 each. Then there's other Pokemon, which can be any species, unlike the original, where it must be the same Pokemon species. Lastly, there's background. If there are some nice looking plants, or maybe there's the Aurora Borealis behind the Pokemon, the player will receive extra points. I think that the background bonus and the change of the bonus from Pokemon species are really nice touches. I do miss Professor Oak's quips though. You were close, and wonderful were 2 of my favorites. I wanted to touch on the amount of stages too, as it has been increased by a decent bit when compared to the original, and this was the thing that I was most concerned about heading into the game. I don't want to spoil too much in case one still wants to play this without being spoiled too much, but basically the Florio Nature Park has a day and night stage, the Jungle has a day and night stage, the Elsewhere Forest has only a day stage, the Sweltering Sands has a day and night stage, the Volcano has a day stage, the Blushing Beach has a day and night stage, the Reef has a day and evening stage, the Outerway Cave has a night stage, the Shivering Snowfields has a day and night stage, and finally, the last stage has only a day stage. On top of these, there are 6 Illumina spots at the campsite for a total of 24 stages. I personally think that the seafloor is a huge standout. I love being underwater with all these water-type Pokemon just swimming around. The legendary here is also badass, but it's a bit tricky to get to. Speaking of that, some of these puzzles are just straight up cryptic. The legendary in the Jungle Night stage is the one that I legitimately thought, like, I don't think I ever would have found on my own. The player is supposed to play the melody machine at the beginning, then turn around, and it just appears. Some of the 4-star poses are kind of obtuse as well. There are requests that give some of these away, which is helpful, and that's another thing to go after to beat the game. But unfortunately though, after a while, this really just became a Google fest for me, and that initial feeling of really just trying to get all 4 Diamond Star poses for all Pokemon just kind of faded. It's much more fun to figure it out on your own, but sometimes it involves playing the same damn stages over and over and over. Sometimes all it takes is the player laying down their guard for just a second, and they can just miss a huge secret, or that nice crystal 4-star picture that you just lined up, it's gone because that second, now they're too small, you lose like size, you lose pose. It's unfortunate. Likewise to the original Pokemon Snap, there really isn't too much outside of the main game. The player can check their photo decks at any time and see the scores on their pictures and the breakdown of the points. The players can also decorate their pictures with funny little stickers and effects too. The game incorporates Nintendo Switch Online by letting the players post their pictures online. It's pretty neat to look at other pictures and try to determine, like, how do they get that pose on that Pokemon? There are also titles and other things that players can unlock by completing the requests. There are also leaderboard rankings, and oh my god, looking at the top 100 is scary. People have managed to get a combined total of over 4 million? That's insane to me. I've been hovering around the 3 million mark, and I've been playing for over 46 hours at this point. This game looks pretty damn solid overall, and much better than Sword and Shield did. Since this is a rail shooter, and Sword and Shield had its big open areas, so I guess this makes sense. I'd argue that some of the textures, though, are a bit muddy and blurry, especially when you zoom in with the camera. The shadows of flying-type Pokemon and their animations can be a bit whack, too. I was surprised to read that this game ran at a full 60 frames per second. I really didn't expect it to after Sword and Shield didn't. I should know, though, that there are some weird frame drops, as I personally didn't affect my fun at all, but with a game like this, I really wish they would have just taken a bit more time to get that extra polish in there, because the whole game revolves around the Pokemon's animations. The resolution is 1080 docked and 720 handheld. Overall, I think the game looks nice, definitely the nicest looking Pokemon game around, and hey, it has the name of fame of being the first Pokemon game to 60 frames a second, but I wish the animations and some textures were a bit cleaner. All in all, new Pokemon Snap is an improvement over the original in plenty of ways, at least in my opinion. There are things that naturally come with time, such as better graphics and, more Pokemon, just a bigger roster. Namco Bandai also made sure to have these stages have a leveling system and diverging paths, which really helps with replayability, albeit at some sacrifice that you might have to grind a bit. I really like how they retooled the scoring system, as it makes people like me want to see all the Pokemon in all 4 of their poses, and just get a very high score. Gotta get that Diamond 4-star rating. I personally have put over 46 hours into the game as I'm typing this, and I'm having a lot of fun with the game, and I would personally give it a 5 out of 7. I think it's super solid. However, fan reception is pretty mixed on new Pokemon Snap. I've seen plenty of comments that read like the following. This is a $60 game? All that you do is take pictures of Pokemon. This was done in 1999. How's it worth $60 in 2021? This looks so boring. Now, I'm not shitting on these comments or thoughts, as I think criticism is welcome. As it stands, it could be difficult to argue about the price tag. The main story is done in only about 6 to 10 hours, and 10 hours, that's pretty on the heavier end. And the basic gameplay is still very basic and shallow. Try-hard nerds like me may get 50 hours or so before calling quits, but for the average person, this will more than likely not entertain them. For one to enjoy new Pokemon Snap, they must fall into one of 3 crowds, or, more favorably, all 3. Group 1 are the people who played the old one and have nostalgia for it. Let's not kid ourselves, nostalgia for the original is the biggest reason why this game was so hyped and so loved. Group 2 are the people who love slower paced games in general, because some people they like to unwind. New Pokemon Snap is a great game to unwind with and just slow down time. The third group of people are those who love seeing Pokemon in their natural environment, and they think of Pokemon as more than just little battle creatures. Seeing the Pokemon in their habitat is so neat, and I love interacting with them to see what will happen. If one doesn't fall into, preferably all 3 groups, but at least a minimum of 1, they're not going to like this game. So guess what? I have nostalgia for the original. I love seeing the Pokemon in their habitats, and I'd like to think of them more as little battle creatures, and I really like the slower paced games in general. That's why this is so enjoyable for me, but I definitely get the complaints that people have with this game. Still though, this is probably my favorite Pokemon game since Pokemon Black and White. This sequel was 20 years in the making, damn it, and honestly, I'll say I really like the result. Hopefully we won't have to wait another 20 years for the next one.